The Kethvar warships moved through space like giant insects made of metal and flesh. Their bioweapons glowed with sickly green light as they fired at the last Coalition defense fleet near the planet Xerion 7. One by one, the alien ships defending the world exploded into bright flashes before going dark forever. Admiral Velnara of the Crystalline Fleet watched from her command ship as another of her vessels dissolved under the Kethvar acid cannons. The enemy had been winning for 10 long years. 70 worlds had already fallen to their endless swarms of warrior drones. Every species that fought them lost badly. "Admiral, we're losing too many ships," her weapons officer reported. His blue crystal skin flickered with stress patterns. "The Kethvar are using their new biotorpedoes. Our shields can't stop them." Velnara gripped the rail of her command platform. The Kethvar moved like one giant mind, perfectly coordinated. When one ship attacked from the left, another would strike from the right at exactly the right moment. No organic species had ever fought with such perfect timing. It was impossible to predict their moves because they all thought as one. "All ships, retreat to hyperspace," she ordered. Another defeat, another world lost. Back on the fortress world of Sanctum Prime, the leaders of 12 different alien species sat around a massive table. General Tech-Hi looked at the holographic map showing their shrinking territory. Red zones marked conquered worlds. There were so many red zones now. "We've lost the Xerion system," Admiral Velnara reported as she entered the war room. Her crystal body was dim with exhaustion. "The Kethvar will reach the core worlds within 6 months. The Bractal war chief slammed his massive fist on the table. His species stood 3 meters tall and could bend steel with their bare hands. But even they ran from the Kethvar swarms. "How do we fight an enemy that moves as one mind? They know our every move before we make it." "Their bioweapons adapt too quickly," added the Solari representative, her energy form flickering with worry. "Every time we develop new defenses, they change their attack patterns within days." General Tech-Hi studied the casualty reports. Millions, dead on every world. Entire species fleeing their home systems. The Veltar insectoids had already lost their breeding worlds. The aquatic Nereids had seen their ocean planets boiled away by Kethvar heat weapons. "Perhaps we should consider surrender terms," whispered the ethereal delegate, his ghostly form barely visible in the dim light. "No," Tech-Hi said firmly. "The Kethvar don't take prisoners. They consume everything. Every world they take becomes another breeding ground for their warriors." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The communications officer, a young Zephyrian, looked puzzled. "Sir, we're receiving an encrypted message from the Outer Rim. Unknown origin." "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered and showed a bipedal creature with pale skin and dark hair. The being wore a simple uniform with strange symbols. "This is Captain Lee Minho of the Terran Defense Force," the creature said in perfect galactic standard language. "We have been observing your conflict with the Kethvar Dominion. Earth wishes to offer assistance to the Galactic Defense Coalition." The Halian leaders looked at each other in confusion. None of them had heard of this Earth or its species. "What is your military strength?" General Tech-Hi asked. "We control one world in the Outer Rim," Captain Lee replied. "But we have something you might find useful in this war." The Bractal chief laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "One world? What can one world do against the Kethvar fleets?" Captain Lee's expression remained serious. "We have experience with war, more experience than any species should have." "Experience?" Admiral Velnara asked. "What kind of experience?" "The kind that comes from fighting ourselves for thousands of years," the human said quietly. "We know how to fight enemies who seem impossible to defeat. We know how to win when everything looks hopeless." The transmission ended, leaving the coalition leaders in stunned silence. "Should we trust them?" the ethereal delegate asked. General Tech-Hi looked at the strategic map again. More red zones appeared every day. The Kethvar would reach the core world soon. When they did, the last free species in the galaxy would die. "We have no choice," he said finally. "Send them our coordinates. Tell them to come quickly." Outside the fortress walls of Sanctum Prime, the night sky showed distant flashes of light. Another battle, another defeat. The Kethvar were coming, and they had never lost a war. But somewhere in the outer rim of the galaxy, On a small blue world called Earth, ancient warriors were preparing to fight again. They had been fighting for so long that war was written into their very souls, and they were coming to show the galaxy what real soldiers could do. The enemy had been winning for 10 years. That was about to change. The human transport ship, new. Sol was nothing like what the coalition leaders expected. While their own vessels gleamed with crystal technology or pulsed with bioorganic components, the human ship looked almost primitive. Simple metal hull, basic engines, no fancy decorations. It docked with Sanctum Prime's main station with mechanical precision. General Tech-Hi waited in the main docking bay with several other coalition leaders. The Bractal war chief stood nearby, his massive form towering over everyone else. Admiral Velnara's crystalline body reflected the station lights as she studied the human ship through the viewing ports. "Are we sure they can help us?" whispered the Solari representative. Her energy form flickered with doubt. "Their ship looks so simple." The airlock hissed open and 3 humans stepped through. The first was a woman with short black hair wearing a dark blue uniform. Behind her came a tall man with serious eyes and another woman who seemed to watch everything carefully. "I am Ambassador Park Gina," the first human said, bowing slightly. "This is Colonel Kim Tae-ho and Lieutenant Choi Yuna. We represent the Earth Defense Council." General Tech-Hi stepped forward. "Welcome to Sanctum Prime. I am General Tech-Hi of the Zephyrian Crystal Fleet. We are grateful for your offer of help, but we must ask, what can one world do against the Kethvar Dominion?" Ambassador Park smiled sadly. "General, may we see your war room? What I need to show you requires privacy." Minutes later, they gathered around the strategic holotable. The map showed the galaxy split between blue coalition territory and red Kethvar zones. The red was spreading like a disease. "We have studied your conflict for the past year," Colonel Kim said. "The Kethvar are efficient hunters. They overwhelm their prey with superior numbers and coordination." "Yes," Admiral Velnara agreed. "Their hive mind makes them unbeatable in direct combat. They move as one perfect organism." Lieutenant Choi activated a small device, and new holographic displays appeared above the table. The coalition leaders gasped. The images showed massive battles, cities burning, weapons they had never seen before. "This is human history," Ambassador Park explained. "These are our wars." The first image showed ancient humans fighting with metal swords and shields. Then came battles with gunpowder weapons, explosions that shook the ground. Next were conflicts with flying machines dropping bombs from the sky. The images kept changing, showing bigger and more terrible wars. "How long have you been fighting?" General Tech-Hi asked quietly. "Always," Park replied. "Since we first picked up stones to throw at wild animals, since we learned to make fire. We have been at war for over 10,000 years." The Bractal chief laughed harshly. "You fight your own species? What kind of madness is that?" Colonel Kim's face remained serious. "The kind that teaches you to survive anything. We have fought in every environment your galaxy contains. Frozen mountains, burning deserts underwater, in space, in cities, in forests. We have fought with every weapon imaginable, and some you cannot imagine." The holographic display changed again. Now it showed detailed battle records, casualty numbers, strategic analyses. The alien leaders fell silent as they absorbed the information. "In our largest war, we lost 55 million soldiers in 6 years, Lieutenant Choi said matter-of-factly. "That was just one conflict. We have fought hundreds of such wars." "But why?" the ethereal delegate whispered, his ghostly form trembling. "Why would you kill your own kind?" Ambassador Park was quiet for a long moment. "Because we are human. We fight over resources, territory, beliefs, sometimes just because we disagree. But each war taught us something new about combat, about survival, about winning when victory seems impossible." She gestured to another image. Soldiers moving through destroyed buildings, carefully checking every shadow and corner. "We learn to fight enemies who think differently than we do. We learn to adapt when our plans fail. Most importantly, we learn to win wars that everyone said were unwinnable." General Tech-Hi studied the human battle records. "Your species has never faced an enemy like the Kethvar. They have superior technology, perfect coordination, and overwhelming numbers." "Actually," Colonel Kim said with a slight smile, We have faced enemies exactly like them, many times. The display showed a massive battle from human history. Millions of soldiers moving in perfect formation, their discipline absolute, their coordination flawless. We call this type of enemy a total war machine, Kim explained. An enemy that fights with complete unity, superior resources, and no mercy. We have fought such enemies before and won. How? Admiral Velnara asked urgently. Lieutenant Choi stepped forward. By fighting the kind of war they cannot understand, by using tactics they cannot predict, by turning their strengths into weaknesses. Ambassador Park looked around the table at the desperate alien faces. The HFY fight, like a perfect machine, but machines break when you hit them in the right places. We know where those places are. The war room was silent except for the humming of the station's life support systems. Outside, distant explosions marked another HFY victory. What do you need from us? General Tekhai asked finally. Just one thing, Park replied. Trust us to fight this war our way. The coalition leaders looked at each other. They had tried everything else and failed. These strange humans from one small world were their last hope. You have it, Tekhai said. 6 human transport ships dropped out of hyperspace near the burning world of Kael'ros. The planet's surface glowed with fires from the ongoing battle. HFY bioships circled like vultures, while coalition forces fought desperately in the ruined cities below. Admiral Velnara watched from her command ship as the human vessels approached. They looked even more basic than the diplomatic ship that had visited Sanctum Prime. No fancy weapons, no energy shields, just simple metal hulls moving steadily toward the battle zone. Human transports, this is Admiral Velnara of the Crystal Fleet, she transmitted. The situation on Kael'ros is hopeless. We're preparing to evacuate all remaining forces. Admiral, this is Colonel Kim Tae-ho, came the reply. We're not here to evacuate, we're here to fight. The first transport ship landed in a cleared area behind coalition lines. The loading ramp dropped with a mechanical clang, and the waiting alien soldiers fell silent as the humans emerged. These were not the young warriors the coalition expected. The first human to step off the ship had grey hair and scars across his weathered face. His uniform was plain green fabric, and he carried a simple metal rifle that looked almost primitive compared to coalition energy weapons. I am Sergeant Major Kang Junho, the human said to the Bractal commander who met them. Where are the enemy positions? The massive alien pointed toward the burning city. The HFY have established 5 hive nodes in the urban center. We cannot break through their defenses. Their bioweapons dissolve our armor, and their drones move too fast for our targeting systems. More humans filed off the transport ships. Each one looked older than typical soldiers, with lined faces and careful eyes that missed nothing. They carried basic equipment, metal rifles, cloth uniforms, simple communication devices, and packs filled with what looked like primitive explosives. Staff Sergeant Han Sumi studied the city through binoculars. Her black hair was streaked with grey, and a long scar ran down her left arm. How long have they held the city? She asked. 3 weeks, replied the Veltar insectoid officer. We lost 2,000 warriors trying to retake it. Sergeant Yoon Hana, a compact woman with quick hands, examined one of the damaged coalition vehicles. The metal was eaten away by HFY acid weapons. Their bioweapons are designed to counter your technology, she observed. Good thing we don't rely on fancy equipment. The coalition officers watched in confusion as the humans unpacked their gear. Where were their heavy weapons, their armored vehicles, their energy shields? Sergeant Major, the Bractal commander asked, where is your main battle equipment? Kang Junho smiled grimly as he checked his rifle. This is it. But how will you penetrate their defenses with such simple weapons? Corporal Song Hyun, a quiet man with steady hands, looked up from cleaning his sniper rifle. The same way we always have, by thinking. The humans split into small groups of 5 or 6 soldiers each. They moved differently than coalition forces. No rigid formations, no synchronized marching. Instead, they flowed like water around obstacles, each group taking a different path toward the city. Where are they going? Admiral Velnara asked over the communication channel. They're not following any standard military formation. Colonel Kim Tae-ho's voice crackled through the radio. "Admiral, human warfare doesn't follow standard patterns. That's why it works." Staff Sergeant Han Sumi led her team through the rubble at the city's edge. Behind her, Private Lee Dano carried a pack full of improvised explosives. Corporal Park Nari had her demolitions kit ready. They moved silently between destroyed buildings, avoiding the main streets where HFY patrols moved in predictable patterns. "There," Sumi whispered, pointing to a pulsing organic structure built into what used to be a shopping center. "Hive node number 3. They'll have 40 to 50 drones inside, plus breeding chambers." "How do we take it?" Lee Dano asked quietly. Sumi studied the alien structure through her scope. The HFY had built their node using the existing building's framework, but they followed their instinctive patterns. Like all Hive creatures, they created the same defensive arrangements every time. "We don't take it," she said. "We kill it." Meanwhile, Sergeant Yoon Hana crawled through the city's old subway tunnels with her team. The HFY had connected their Hive nodes with bioorganic tubes that pulsed with nutrient flows. They never expected anyone to attack from below ground, charges. "Set," she whispered into her radio. "Detonation in 30 seconds. On the other side of the city, Corporal Song Hyun lay perfectly still on a rooftop 3 kilometers away. Through his rifle scope, he watched a group of HFY commanders emerge from the central Hive node. The aliens moved with absolute confidence, believing themselves safe behind their bioweapon defenses. Song Hyun's rifle was old-fashioned. It fired simple metal bullets powered by chemical explosives. No energy signature for the HFY to detect. No fancy technology to malfunction, just physics and patience. He squeezed the trigger once. The first explosion came from underground, as Yoon Hana's charges severed the connection tubes between Hive nodes. The second explosion was Staff Sergeant Han Sumi's team, destroying Node 3 from the inside. The third sound was Song Hyun's rifle, fired from a position the HFY never thought to guard. For the first time in 10 years of galactic conquest, the HFY hive mind experienced something it had never felt before: confusion. The humans had arrived and nothing would be the same. The HFY hive mind felt something wrong. 3 of their hive nodes had gone silent within minutes of each. This had never happened before in their 10 years of conquest. The drones moved in confused patterns, trying to understand what kind of enemy could strike from 3 different directions at once. In the central command node, the HFY queen brain pulsed with angry red light. Her thoughts reached every drone across the city instantly. Find the attackers. Kill them all. But the human veterans had already vanished. Staff Sergeant Han Sumi led her team through the underground maintenance tunnels beneath the city. The HFY had built their hive nodes above ground, never thinking that enemies might attack from below. Their hive mind was perfect for coordinating attacks, but it made them predictable. "They're sending search parties down every major street," she whispered to her team as they moved through the darkness. Following the same patrol patterns they always use, Private Lee Dano carried a heavy pack filled with homemade explosives. "How do you know their patterns?" Sumi smiled in the darkness. "Because hive minds always think the same way. We fought enemies like this before on Earth. Ants, bees, termites. They all follow instinct. Change the environment and they get confused." Above them, HFY drones searched frantically through the rubble. Their biosensors could detect coalition energy weapons easily, but the humans carried no advanced technology. Simple metal rifles, cloth uniforms and chemical explosives left almost no signature to track. Sergeant Yoon Hana emerged from a destroyed building 6 blocks away from where the HFY were searching. She had been moving through the ruins for 2 hours, placing small charges at key structural points. The aliens had built their hive networks using the city's existing framework, but they didn't understand human architecture. Charges set at support. "Pillars," she reported quietly into her radio. "Building 7 will come down in 5 minutes, sir." The explosion, when it came, brought down an entire city block. The HFY had converted the area into a breeding complex, and thousands of developing drones died in the collapse. More importantly, the falling debris blocked 3 major routes between hive nodes. The hive mind screamed in frustration. How could enemies destroy so much without being detected? Corporal Song Hyun lay perfectly still on a rooftop, 800 meters from the central hive node. He had been in position for 4 hours, moving only to track targets through his rifle scope. The Kethvar commanders emerged from their fortress at regular intervals, checking on their confused drones. They never looked up. His first shot killed the senior bioweapons coordinator. The second eliminated the tactical commander. By the third shot, the remaining Kethvar realized they were under attack, but they couldn't locate the sniper. Song Hyun's position was perfectly chosen. He could see them, but their biosensors couldn't detect him. "Command structure disrupted," he reported calmly. "They're losing coordination." Colonel Kim Tai-ho monitored the battle from his mobile command post, moving constantly to avoid detection. Unlike coalition commanders, who stayed in heavily defended positions, he stayed close to the fighting. Human military doctrine was simple. Leaders fought alongside their soldiers. "All teams, Phase 2, he transmitted. "Begin urban infiltration." The veterans scattered throughout the ruined city like shadows. They moved differently than any enemy the Kethvar had faced. Instead of attacking in formation, each human team operated independently. Instead of holding ground, they appeared, struck and vanished before the aliens could respond. Private Park Nari crawled through the ventilation system of what used to be an office building. The Kethvar had converted it into a weapons storage facility, filling it with bioacid launchers and plasma breeding pods. They guarded every entrance but never thought to check the air ducts. She placed her explosives carefully, setting timers for maximum confusion. The charges would go off in sequence, making the Kethvar think they were under attack from multiple directions. Staff Sergeant Han Sumi taught a group of surviving coalition soldiers how to move through urban ruins. The Veltar insectoids were quick learners, but they had always fought in open battlefields. "Don't think about taking territory," she explained as they crept through a destroyed shopping center. "Think about making the enemy afraid to leave their holes. Every time they send out a patrol, we kill it. Every time they try to communicate, we cut the lines. We don't fight their strength, we attack their weaknesses." The Braktal warrior beside her looked confused. "But how do we win without defeating their main force?" Sumi pointed to a group of Kethvar drones moving nervously down the street. "Look at them. Yesterday, they moved with perfect confidence. Today, they're scared. Fear spreads through a hive mind faster than fire. When they're afraid to leave their nodes, they've already lost." The human tactics were unlike anything in galactic military history. The coalition had always fought wars through direct confrontation, fleet against fleet, army against army. But the humans fought like ghosts, striking everywhere and nowhere, turning the Kethavar's perfect coordination into a weakness. By nightfall, 5 more hive nodes had been destroyed or abandoned. The Kethvar forces that had controlled the entire city for 3 weeks were now trapped in their remaining strongholds, afraid to venture outside. The hive mind, for the first time in its existence, experienced something completely foreign to its nature: doubt. In hidden positions throughout the city, human veterans cleaned their weapons and prepared for another day of war. They had been fighting like this for thousands of years. The Kethvar were just learning what it meant to face an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. The Battle of Kael'ros ended on the 7th day with something the galaxy had not seen in 10 years: Kethvar forces retreating from a world they had conquered. Their bioships lifted off from the planet's surface in complete disorder, abandoning ground forces that had held the city for 3 weeks. General Tech High stood in the ruins of what used to be Kael'ros Central Plaza, unable to believe what he was seeing. Kethvar drones lay scattered throughout the rubble, their perfect coordination finally broken. For the first time since the war began, the enemy had fled. "How?" Admiral Velnara asked quietly. Her crystalline form reflected the morning light. As she surveyed the battlefield, "How did you do in 7 days what we couldn't do in 3 weeks? Sergeant Major Kang Junho sat on a piece of broken concrete, methodically cleaning his rifle. His uniform was dirty and torn, but his eyes held the calm satisfaction of a job well done. "We didn't fight their war," he said simply. "We fought ours." The human veterans moved through the city like tired ghosts, checking every building and tunnel system. They had been fighting for 7 days straight with barely any sleep, but their experience showed in every movement. These were soldiers who had learned to function when normal people would collapse. Staff Sergeant Han Sumi emerged from the underground tunnels with a group of coalition fighters she had been training. The alien soldiers moved differently now, carefully, quietly, thinking before each step. In 7 days, she had taught them more about urban warfare than they had learned in years of military service. "The HFY Hive nodes are completely abandoned," she reported. "They left so fast they didn't even destroy their equipment." Colonel Kim Tae-ho studied the abandoned alien technology with professional interest. "They panic when their coordination breaks down," he observed. "Individual HFY are actually quite weak without the hive mind directing them." This was the key discovery that would change the entire war. The HFY seemed invincible because they fought as one perfect organism, but that unity was also their greatest weakness. Disrupt their communication, kill their commanders, create enough chaos, and they became just another enemy that could be defeated. Lieutenant Choi Yuna had spent the battle documenting everything. Her reports would be sent to coalition military academies across the galaxy, teaching other species how to fight the way humans fought. The psychological aspect was crucial, she explained to General Tech-Hi. "We didn't just attack their positions, we attacked their confidence. Every unexpected assault, every impossible shot from Corporal Song-hyun, every building that collapsed at the wrong time made them doubt their own superiority." The Bractal war chief examined a HFY bioweapon that had been abandoned in the retreat. "I still don't understand how simple metal bullets defeated their advanced technology." Sergeant Yoon Hana looked up from defusing an enemy mine. "Because they designed their defenses to stop energy weapons and bioattacks. Nobody in this galaxy still uses chemical explosives and kinetic rounds. They had no protection against weapons they thought were primitive." This lesson would transform galactic warfare. Within months, coalition factories would be producing simple gunpowder weapons alongside their sophisticated energy systems. The humans had shown them that sometimes old technology worked better than new. Corporal Song-hyun packed his sniper rifle carefully. In 7 days, he had eliminated 43 high-value targets from distances the HFY thought were impossible. "Their commanders always emerged at the same times," he explained to interested coalition officers. "Hive minds follow patterns. Patterns can be predicted." The real victory, however, was not just tactical but strategic. News of the Kael'ros defeat spread through both coalition and HFY communication networks. For the first time in the war, other species began to believe they could fight back. Meanwhile, the HFY hive mind experienced something completely foreign to its nature: fear of defeat. Ambassador Park Gina arrived from Sanctum Prime on the 2nd day after the battle. She found General Tech-Hi and Colonel Kim in the ruins of the city's command center, planning the next phase of operations. "The Coalition High Command wants to know if this victory can be repeated," she said. Kim nodded confidently. "We've identified the core weakness in HFY tactics. Their hive mind is perfect for coordination, but terrible for adaptation. They can't handle enemies who refuse to fight predictably. More importantly," added General Tech-Hi, "your people are teaching our soldiers to think differently about warfare. We always fought like we expected enemies to behave rationally. Humans fight as if every enemy might do something crazy." Private Lee Dano helped clear unexploded ordnance from the city streets. His pack had carried enough homemade explosives to level several city blocks, all built from basic materials that could be found anywhere. "That's because humans are crazy," he said cheerfully. "After 10,000 years of fighting ourselves, we learned to expect anything." As the sun set over the liberated city, human veterans worked alongside coalition soldiers to establish new defensive positions. But these were not the static defense lines that had failed everywhere else in the galaxy. These were mobile positions, hidden supply caches, and escape routes that would let defenders appear and disappear like ghosts. Sergeant Major Kang Junho stood on a rooftop overlooking the city as night fell. The stars showed distant flashes of light where other battles raged across the galaxy. But now those battles would be different. Coalition forces trained by human veterans were learning to fight wars that could not be won through superior technology or perfect coordination. They were learning to win through experience, adaptation, and the simple human understanding that every fight was different and survival meant being ready for anything. The HFY had been winning for 10 years. That era was ending,